The quantum communications array aboard the ISS Resilience crackled to life, its message echoing through humanity's last orbital command center. Admiral Elena Torres stared at the holographic display, her weathered face illuminated by the electric blue glow of Earth's defensive grid. The Drachnid Empire's latest ultimatum hung in the air like a toxic cloud. "Submit or be eradicated," the message had said. The same words they'd been hearing for the past 18 months since first contact. But this time, something was different. This time, humanity had a card to play. "Status report," Torres commanded, her voice steady despite the weight of 8 billion lives pressing down on her shoulders. The command center hummed with activity as officers coordinated what remained of Earth's United Defense Forces. Dr. James Chen, head of Project Phoenix, stepped forward. His usual pristine lab coat was wrinkled from countless sleepless nights spent in the underground labs. "It's ready, Admiral. The quantum decryption matrix has successfully mapped their entire command and control network. Every transmission, every protocol, every security measure. We can see it all." Torres allowed herself a small smile. The Drachnids, in their arrogance, had never bothered to change their communication protocols. Why should they? No primitive species had ever managed to crack their quantum encryption before, but they had never faced humanity's desperate ingenuity before either. "Show me," Torres ordered, and Chen activated the main display. The hologram expanded, revealing a vast network of interconnected nodes representing the Drachnid Empire's communication infrastructure. But more importantly, it showed their weakness, their absolute reliance on bureaucracy and protocol. Lieutenant Sarah Harrison, the youngest officer ever to serve in orbital command, stepped up to the display. Her expertise in xenolinguistics had been crucial in decoding the Drachnids' administrative language. "Their entire empire runs on automated systems, Admiral. Every decision, every military action, every resource allocation, it all has to go through their central processing network. And now we have the key to it all." The discovery had come at a terrible cost. Billions dead, cities reduced to ash, entire continents bearing the scars of orbital bombardment. But humanity had endured. More than that, they had learned. While the Drachnids had expected them to fight with missiles and plasma weapons, humanity had turned to their greatest strength, their ability to adapt and overcome. "Begin Operation Ghost in the machine," Torres commanded. Around the world, hidden quantum computers hummed to life, their processors beginning the careful work of infiltrating the Drachnid network. They wouldn't attack, not yet. First, they would watch, learn, and prepare. Harrison's fingers flew over her console, implementing the first phase of their plan. Inserting phantom protocols now. As far as their system is concerned, Earth is already under their administrative control. "We're generating backdated paperwork, resource requisitions, and compliance reports dating back 6 months. And they'll believe it?" Torres asked, though she already knew the answer. The Drachnids were bound by their own rules, their entire society built on the foundation of absolute administrative order. Chen nodded, his eyes gleaming with carefully controlled satisfaction. "They have to. Their system is designed to be infallible. The idea that someone could falsify records at this scale doesn't exist in their worldview. By the time they realize something's wrong, it'll be too late." Torres turned to face the Earth, visible through the station's observation window. The planet below bore the scars of resistance, but it was still there, still fighting. The Drachnids had expected humanity to break under their superior technology and overwhelming force. Instead, humanity had done what it had always done: adapted, evolved, and found a way to turn their enemy's strength into a weakness. "Send the response," Torres ordered. The message they'd crafted was a masterpiece of malicious compliance, accepting the Drachnids' authority while embedding the seeds of their destruction within the acceptance itself. Every word, every protocol reference, every bureaucratic acknowledgement was designed to create a cascade of automated processes that would gradually give humanity more and more control over the Empire's own systems. As the quantum transmission beamed out into space, Torres allowed herself to feel the first real hope since the invasion began. The Drachnids had brought their overwhelming military might to crush humanity. In response, humanity had turned their own bureaucracy into a weapon more devastating than any fleet of warships. The real war was about to begin, and the Drachnids wouldn't even know they were fighting it until it was too late. Humanity would not just survive. They would tear down an empire using nothing but paperwork and patience. "Now we wait," Torres said, watching the confirmation of their transmission flash across the screen. "And we prepare for Phase 2. The officers around her nodded, each returning to their stations with renewed purpose. They had endured the fire of invasion and emerged stronger, smarter, and more dangerous than their enemies could possibly imagine. The Drachnid Empire was about to learn a harsh lesson about underestimating humanity's capacity for innovation and revenge. 3 weeks after implementing Operation Ghost in the machine, the first cracks in the Drachnid Empire's armor began to show. In the depths of the lunar command bunker, Lieutenant Harrison's holographic display lit up with incoming data streams. Each one represented another successful infiltration into the Empire's vast network of automated systems. "Admiral Torres," Harrison called out, her voice tight with controlled excitement. "You need to see this." Torres crossed the command center, her movements deliberate despite the urgency in Harrison's tone. The younger officer's display showed a cascade of authorization codes being processed through the Drachnid's central processing network. "Their own systems are starting to work against them," Harrison explained, highlighting key data points. "Every false compliance report we uploaded has triggered automated resource reallocations. Their defense fleet above Europa just received orders to redeploy to the Centauri sector due to our phantom security requests." Dr. Chen joined them, his tablet displaying complex quantum algorithms. "The beauty of it is, they can't countermand the orders without violating their own protocols. Their entire military structure is built on absolute adherence to automated directives." Torres studied the data with careful consideration. The plan was working even better than they'd hoped. The Drachnid's rigid dedication to their administrative systems had become a fatal flaw. Every false document they inserted into the network created ripples of automated responses, each one further weakening the Empire's grip on Earth. "Show me the strategic overview," Torres commanded. The main holographic display activated, revealing a 3-dimensional map of the solar system. Drachnid fleet positions were marked in red, their movements telling a story of growing chaos disguised as routine operations. "We've achieved something unprecedented," Chen said, pulling up additional data streams. Their quantum encryption was designed to be unbreakable, but they never considered that someone might actually understand how their administrative AI thinks. "We're not just sending fake orders, we're teaching their system to think the way we want it to." The implications were staggering. Humanity hadn't just cracked the Drachnid security. They had turned the Empire's own technological foundation into a weapon. Every passing day saw more of their forces redeployed based on falsified threat assessments and bureaucratic necessities that didn't actually exist. "Status of Project Labyrinth?" Torres asked, referring to the next phase of their operation. Harrison brought up a new display. "Ready for implementation. We've created an entire phantom sector in their administrative database. As far as their system is concerned, there's a critical military installation in the Kuiper Belt that requires immediate reinforcement. The beauty is, their protocols won't allow them to ignore it, even though it doesn't actually exist." Torres allowed herself a moment of grim satisfaction. The Drachnids had brought overwhelming force to subjugate Earth, never imagining that their real vulnerability lay not in their military might, but in their absolute reliance on automated systems and protocols. "Incoming transmission," one of the communications officers announced. "High Command of the Drachnid Empire is requesting an emergency conference." "They're starting to suspect something's wrong," Chen observed. "But they still don't understand what." Torres straightened her uniform. "Put them through to my private chamber." "Lieutenant Harrison, continue implementing Project Labyrinth. Dr. Chen, prepare the next phase of Phantom protocols." It's time to increase the pressure. The holographic face of High Commander Vexthor materialized in Taurus's chamber, its scaled features arranged in what passed for concern among the Drachnids. Admiral Taurus, the alien voice rumbled. We are detecting anomalies in our administrative networks concerning Earth sector. Taurus kept her expression neutral, years of diplomatic training coming into play. High Commander, I assure you that all protocols are being followed exactly as specified in the surrender documents. The holographic face of High Commander Vexthor materialized in Taurus's chamber, its scaled features arranged in what passed for concern among the Drachnids. Admiral Taurus, the alien voice rumbled. We are detecting anomalies in our administrative networks concerning Earth sector. Taurus kept her expression neutral, years of diplomatic training coming into play. High Commander, I assure you that all protocols are being followed exactly as specified in the surrender documents. Perhaps your systems are having difficulty processing the volume of compliance reports. We can reduce our submission rate if necessary. The suggestion was carefully calculated. Drachnid doctrine made it impossible for them to request fewer compliance reports. Doing so would violate their own administrative requirements. Taurus watched as Vexthor's features twisted in confusion, caught between suspicion and the inability to challenge properly filed documentation. That will not be necessary, Vexthor finally responded. Continue your submissions as scheduled. After the transmission ended, Taurus allowed herself a small smile. The Drachnids were beginning to sense that something was wrong, but their own rigid systems prevented them from effectively investigating. They were trapped by the very bureaucracy they had used to control their empire. Back in the command center, Harrison's team continued their work, inserting phantom data points and false requisitions into the Drachnid network. Each piece of false information was designed to trigger specific automated responses, gradually drawing more and more of the Empire's forces away from Earth. Phase 2 is fully implemented, Harrison reported as Taurus returned. Their system has begun generating its own false data points based on our inserted protocols. It's like a virus that's learned to replicate itself. How long until they realize what's really happening? One of the junior officers asked. Taurus looked at the strategic display, watching as another Drachnid battle group received orders to investigate a non-existent threat in the outer solar system. By the time they figure it out, it will be too late. Their entire command structure will have been compromised by their own automated systems. The war for Earth's freedom wasn't being fought with warships and energy weapons. It was being won with data streams and phantom protocols, turning the Drachnids' greatest strength into their ultimate weakness. Humanity had learned to fight smarter, not harder, and the Empire was about to learn a costly lesson about the dangers of underestimating human ingenuity. The Lunar Command Center's strategic room had changed in the 2 months since Operation Ghost in the Machine began. What had once been a desperate last stand had transformed into a hub of calculated manipulation. Holographic displays showed hundreds of simultaneous operations across the Drachnid Empire's vast network, each one carefully designed to push their rigid system closer to collapse. Admiral Torres studied the latest intelligence reports with Dr. Chen and Lieutenant Harrison. "Show me the political analysis," she requested, and Harrison brought up a new holographic overlay. "The Drachnid Empire isn't as unified as they wanted us to believe," Harrison explained, highlighting various power centers within their political structure. "We've identified at least 3 major factions competing for influence: the Military Directorate, the Administrative Council, and the Technological Consensus. Each one blames the others for the growing system irregularities we've created." Chen nodded, adding his own insights. "Their society's absolute dependence on automated systems has created the perfect environment for our operation. No one dares to suggest the system itself might be compromised. That would be heresy in their culture. Instead, they're looking for someone to blame." Torres watched as the holographic display showed the growing chaos spreading through the Empire's political structure. Their phantom protocols hadn't just disrupted military operations. They had created a crisis of confidence in the Drachnid leadership. "New development," a communications officer called out. The Administrative Council has just filed formal charges against High Commander Vexthor, claiming negligence in Earth sector oversight. Harrison couldn't suppress a smile. They're doing our work for us. Every faction is so caught up in protecting itself that they're tearing their own empire apart. Incoming transmission, another officer announced. It's not from the military directorate this time. The technological consensus is requesting a direct channel. Torres exchanged glances with her team. This was unexpected, but not unwelcome. Put them through to the secure chamber. Dr. Chen, you're with me. Harrison, continue monitoring the political developments. The holographic form that materialized was different from the military leaders they'd dealt with before. Arch-technologist Zinra had the same scaled features as all drachnids, but her movements were more precise, calculated. Admiral Torres, Zinra began, her translator conveying a tone of carefully controlled urgency. The technological consensus has concerns about recent developments within the Empire. Torres maintained a neutral expression. We've been fully compliant with all technical protocols as required by the surrender agreements. Yes, Zinra replied, a note of frustration entering her voice. That's precisely what concerns us. Your compliance has been perfect. Too perfect. Chen stepped forward. Are you suggesting there's such a thing as too much compliance with drachnid protocols? The question was beautifully crafted, forcing Zinra into an impossible position. She couldn't agree without undermining the very foundation of drachnid society, but she couldn't disagree without dismissing her own suspicions. We propose a direct exchange of technical information, Zinra finally said, outside the standard protocols. And there it was, the first crack in the drachnid's monolithic facade. A faction willing to operate outside their rigid systems out of desperation to understand what was happening. An interesting proposal, Torres replied carefully. One that would seem to violate several core directives of the Empire. Zinra's holographic form flickered slightly. The Empire's current situation requires innovative solutions. After the transmission ended, Torres and Chen rejoined Harrison in the command center. They're starting to break their own rules, Harrison observed. This is exactly what we were waiting for. Torres nodded. Prepare Operation Mirror. If the technological consensus wants to operate outside normal protocols, we'll give them a chance to see just how deep the system corruption goes. The next phase of their plan was even more ambitious than the first. They would use the technological consensus's cooperation to plant evidence suggesting that key military leaders had been secretly altering the automated systems for their own benefit. The beauty of it was that some of those leaders actually had been doing exactly that. Humanity had just made their minor infractions appear far more significant. Incoming data burst from our quantum probes in the Drachnid capital system, Harrison announced. The Administrative Council is calling for an emergency session. They're demanding a full audit of all military operations in the Earth sector. An audit they'll conduct using the very systems we've compromised. Chen added with satisfaction. Every investigation they launch will only reveal more of our phantom protocols, each one designed to point to different factions within their empire. Torres watched as the strategic display updated, showing the growing divisions within the Drachnid power structure. What had started as a defensive strategy had evolved into something far more devastating, the systematic dismantling of an empire using its own rigid bureaucracy as a weapon. They thought their greatest strength was their unity, Torres observed, watching as another political crisis erupted in the Drachnid capital. Their absolute adherence to protocol, their unshakable faith in their automated systems. Instead, it's becoming their greatest vulnerability. Harrison's console lit up with new alerts. The military directorate is recalling ships from 17 sectors to conduct their own investigation. The Administrative Council is threatening to shut down key network nodes if they do. The technological consensus is demanding access to restricted protocols. And every action they take, Chen added, every investigation they launch, every override they attempt, only feeds more data into our phantom protocols. They're not just fighting each other. They're actively helping us extend our control over their networks. Torres allowed herself a moment of grim satisfaction. The Drachnids had sought to crush humanity through overwhelming force. Instead, they had given humanity the perfect opportunity to demonstrate just how dangerous adaptive intelligence could be against rigid, unthinking power. "Prepare the next phase," she ordered. "It's time to show the Drachnid Empire exactly what happens when they underestimate humanity's capacity for innovation." The quantum displays in Lunar Command pulse with an almost hypnotic rhythm as humanity's infiltration of the Drachnid Empire reached its critical phase. Admiral Torres stood before the strategic hologram, watching as years of careful planning finally approached their culmination. "Status report on Operation Hydra," she commanded, her voice steady despite the tension filling the command center. Lieutenant Harrison's fingers danced across her console, bringing up multiple data streams. All 7 Phantom protocols are functioning at optimal levels. The Drachnid factions are exactly where we want them, too busy fighting each other to see the real threat. Dr. Chen approached with his latest analysis. The beauty of it is in the escalation pattern. Each faction's attempts to protect itself from the others only creates more vulnerabilities for us to exploit. They're literally programming their own defeat. The main display showed the current state of the Drachnid Empire's political structure, once a monolithic force, now fractured into competing power centers. The military directorate had withdrawn forces from a dozen sectors, convinced of sabotage by the Administrative Council. The technological consensus had locked down critical systems, claiming evidence of military tampering. The Administrative Council had begun purging suspected collaborators from their ranks. "Incoming priority transmission," announced the communications officer. "Multiple sources. Put them through simultaneously," Torres ordered. The holographic display split into 3 sections, showing representatives from each major Drachnid faction. Their scaled features showed varying degrees of agitation, a far cry from the supreme confidence they'd displayed during the invasion of Earth. High Commander Vex Thor spoke first, his military authority now clearly strained. "The human Torres, we demand explanation for the systematic failures in our defense networks." Before Torres could respond, Arch-technologist Zinra cut in. "Your military incompetence is the failure, Commander. Our analysis shows clear evidence of unauthorized modifications to critical systems under your authority." The Administrative Council's representative, Supreme Administrator Koval, raised his voice over both. "The consensus has no authority to conduct such analysis without proper documentation. This violation of protocol will be reported and processed according to statute." Torres let them argue, each accusation and counter-accusation further entrenching their divisions. Humanity had learned that their greatest weapon against the Drachnids wasn't technology or military might. It was the Empire's own inability to adapt, to question its fundamental assumptions about how power should be structured. "If I may," Torres finally interrupted, her tone perfectly calibrated to convey helpful concern. "Our compliance officers have prepared detailed reports addressing each of your concerns. We'll need to submit them through separate channels, of course, to maintain proper protocol." The suggestion sent all 3 factions into a new round of arguments about proper procedural jurisdiction. Meanwhile, Harrison's team continued their real work, using the distraction to embed even deeper levels of control into the Drachnid's networks. After the transmission ended, Shen brought up a new set of data points. Phase 4 is complete. Their entire command and control structure is now running on our Phantom protocols. They just don't know it yet. Torres studied the strategic display, watching as their years of patient infiltration reached the tipping point. "Show me the final implementation schedule." Harrison brought up a complex timeline. "The system is primed. On your command, we can trigger the cascading failure of their entire administrative network. Every ship, every station, every military installation will receive contradictory orders simultaneously. Their rigid adherence to protocol will prevent them from acting without proper authorization, but every authority will be too compromised to give that authorization." "And the failsafes?" Torres asked, though she already knew the answer. That's the most elegant part, Chen explained, his eyes gleaming with professional pride. Their fail-safe systems will detect the contradictions and attempt to resolve them using standard protocols. Protocols we've already compromised. Every attempt to fix the system will only make the chaos worse. Torres allowed herself a moment to appreciate the poetry of it. The Drachnids had tried to crush humanity through brute force, never understanding that adaptation and innovation were far more powerful than rigid strength. New development, Harrison called out. The military directorate is attempting to implement emergency protocols. They're starting to suspect the true scope of our infiltration. Too late, Chen observed. Their own security measures prevent them from shutting down the network completely. That would require unanimous agreement from all three factions. Agreement they'll never reach in time. Torres moved to the command center's main console. The weight of the moment pressed down on her, the culmination of humanity's response to an empire that had thought them primitive and weak. Send the final authorization, she ordered. Implementation code. Phoenix rising. Around the solar system, hidden quantum processors activated, sending carefully crafted packets of data through the Drachnids' networks. Each packet was designed to trigger specific responses, creating a cascade of system failures and contradictory orders that would tear the Empire's command structure apart from within. It's done, Harrison announced, watching as the first waves of chaos began spreading through the Drachnid systems. Their entire network is consuming itself. Every attempt to restore order only accelerates the collapse. Torres watched the strategic display as humanity's greatest deception reached its climax. They had never needed to defeat the Drachnid Empire in battle. Instead, they had turned the Empire's greatest strength, its absolute reliance on rigid systems and protocols, into a weapon more devastating than any fleet of warships. Prepare for Phase 5, Torres commanded. It's time to show the galaxy what happens when you underestimate humanity's capacity for innovation. The command center hummed with activity as they prepared for the final phase of their operation. The Drachnid Empire was about to learn that true power didn't lie in unthinking strength, but in the ability to adapt, to innovate, and to turn an enemy's own nature against them. The Drachnid Empire's capital world, Wrathful, blazed with emergency lights as its automated systems tore themselves apart. In Lunar Command, Admiral Torres and her team watched the culmination of their years-long strategy unfold across the holographic displays. Total systems failure across 87% of Drachnid space, Lieutenant Harrison reported, her voice tight with controlled excitement. Their entire command structure is paralyzed. Emergency protocols are activating, but each one only triggers more conflicts in the system. Dr. Chen studied the cascade of data flowing across his screens. The beauty of it is in the completeness. They can't even surrender properly. The authorization protocols for surrender negotiations have been compromised along with everything else. Torres watched as the empire that had nearly destroyed Earth crumbled under the weight of its own rigid bureaucracy. The holographic display showed chaos spreading across thousands of worlds as contradictory orders and failing systems brought the mighty Drachnids to their knees. Incoming transmission, the communications officer announced. It's different. A joint broadcast from all three major factions. Put it through, Torres ordered, straightening her uniform. The holographic projectors came to life, showing the leaders of each Drachnid faction. Their usual arrogance had been replaced by something Torres had never seen in their species before: fear. High Commander Vexthor spoke first, his scales dulled with stress. The human Torres, we request immediate cessation of all network activities. The damage to our systems is precisely what you deserve. Torres interrupted, her voice carrying the weight of Earth's suffering. You came to our world with overwhelming force, believing that superior technology and rigid protocols made you invincible. You never understood that humanity's greatest strength isn't in our weapons or our technology. It's in our ability to adapt, to innovate, to turn an enemy's strength into their weakness. Arch-technologist Zinra stepped forward. What you have done, it should have been impossible. Our systems were perfect, unbreakable. Perfect systems are often the most vulnerable, Chen interjected. They lack the flexibility to handle the unexpected. You built an empire on the assumption that absolute control through automation was power. We showed you that true power lies in adaptation and creativity. The Administrative Council's Supreme Administrator, Koval, raised his voice. The protocols. There must be proper procedures for this situation. The protocols are gone, Harrison announced, her fingers dancing across her console. Every backup, every failsafe, every emergency system, they're all compromised. Your empire ran on automated trust, and we turned that trust into a weapon. Torres allowed her words to sink in before continuing. But humanity isn't like you. We don't seek to dominate through rigid control. We're offering you a choice. The strategic display shifted, showing a new set of protocols being uploaded to what remained of the Drachnid network. These are the terms for a new relationship between our species, Torres explained. Not one of conqueror and conquered, but of equals learning from each other's strengths. You would show mercy? Vexthor asked, mandibles clicking in confusion. After what we did to your world. Mercy isn't weakness, Torres replied. It's understanding that growth comes from learning from our mistakes. You tried to crush us with overwhelming force. In response, we could destroy your entire civilization with a few lines of code. Instead, we're offering you a chance to. The terms were elegant in their simplicity. The Drachnid Empire would be reorganized, its rigid protocols replaced with more flexible systems. Earth would share its technological innovations, helping the Drachnids build a society that balanced order with adaptability. In return, the combined resources of both civilizations would be turned toward rebuilding and exploring the galaxy together. There will be resistance, Zinra warned. Many will see this as a violation of our most sacred principles. Then they'll need to adapt, Torres answered simply, just as we did when you forced us to become something more than we were. The negotiations took hours, but the outcome was never in doubt. The Drachnids had no choice. Their entire civilization had been brought to a standstill by humanity's ingenuity. But as Torres watched the final agreements being transmitted, she felt no triumph, only the weight of responsibility for shaping the future of two civilizations. Send the shutdown codes, she ordered. Across Drachnid space, the Phantom protocols began to disengage, allowing basic systems to resume normal operations. It would take years to fully rebuild their network, but this time it would be done with human innovation helping to guide the way. Dr. Chen approached her as the command center began to quiet. Was it worth it? He asked quietly. All the lives lost, the cities destroyed, the years of planning and sacrifice. Torres looked at the Earth visible through the command center's windows. The scars of invasion were still visible, but they would heal. More importantly, humanity had not just survived. They had evolved, proving that intelligence, creativity, and adaptability were the greatest powers in the galaxy. We didn't just win a war, she answered. We changed the course of two civilizations. The Drachnids learned that absolute control breeds vulnerability, and we learned that our greatest strength isn't in our weapons or our hatred, but in our ability to imagine better futures. As the sun rose over Earth's scared but healing surface, humanity stood at the dawn of a new era. They had defeated an empire not through superior firepower, but through innovation and understanding. The price of victory had been high, but the reward was the opportunity to build something greater than either civilization could have achieved alone. The future would bring new challenges, new threats, and new opportunities, but humanity had proven that they were ready to face them all, armed with their greatest weapons: adaptability, creativity, and the wisdom to know when victory means offering an enemy the chance to become an ally.